Hello, today I have a very special guest, author Mr. Ridley Pearson, and he's probably his Peter and the Starcatchers and Kingdom Keepers series are my favorite ones ever. So I'm very excited to have him on the show. Hi there.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I was telling my school librarian about this, and
All right. Love librarians.
She gave me this copy of the first Peter and the Starcatchers book.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
At an educators meeting, and it's nice because this is my first copy.
That's a little beat up there, Thompson. I'm afraid you've lost your cover.
Yeah, my dad got it for me for my kindergarten graduation. 6
That's
years
pretty
ago.
young to be reading it. That's good for you if you could read it then. Could you read it or did you read it together?
Yeah, we read it together, and then
Okay.
I read it on my own in 4th grade, I think.
Good for you. That's perfect.
So my first question is, what inspired you to be a writer?
Well, I co-wrote the novel, several novels in Peter and the Starcatchers with a very funny guy named Dave Barry, who's a professional humorist. And Dave says the reason we write is we have no useful skills. That's not quite why I started, but I think, I've always imagined. I have a really big imagination, and I've always had stories in my head. I started writing when I was 10, and I wrote as many stories as I could write. And I wrote them on a typewriter, like writing now on a computer. And I just so enjoyed it. It was, and remains, just such a big part of my life. So I think somehow, for years, I was a traveling singer-songwriter with bands. And I was, of course, telling stories through my songs.
Yeah.
And at some point, I gravitated toward longer pieces like novels. And here I am. It's a very hard life. I don't recommend it to anyone without having a full-time job. Only 5% of all writers, all published writers, live off their writing. I'm one of the lucky few, but I work really, really, really hard and try to earn that honor and respect from my readers with every breath I take.
Yeah, if I would have told myself in kindergarten that I'd be sitting here talking to you, I wouldn't have believed it.
Exactly.
So, you're
well, and to have a webcast and a podcast, it's pretty amazing, man. You're incredible, Thompson. You're living the dream.
Yeah, it's tons of fun.
It is.
Yeah, so
Fun to be creative, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just you're probably the reason that I love reading so much, because that was like the first book that I'm just like, okay, this is my book that wasn't bored a little golden book.
Well, that's as a writer, that's the highest compliment you could pay me.
Yeah, I just really
got you reading. The reason I write for adults too. I write sort of thrilling, crime-infested novels for adults. But the reason I've written 30 novels for younger readers, in large part, was to try to put something out there that was exciting and fun to read, and to keep young readers reading. So thanks. The interview's over, Thompson. That was just fabulous. You've made my day. I'll see you later. Just kidding.
Okay, so my second question for you is, growing up, what was your favorite book or author?
Well, by the time I got to 8th or 9th grade, and ever since, my favorite book has been To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah,
when I was younger, I read almost all of Rudyard Kipling, a guy who wrote about India a lot. And I just loved those books. Rikki Tikki Tavi and all the crazy characters in the jungles of India. I read all the Hardy Boys, all the Nancy Drews. Loved them all. My very first book that I fell deeply in love with I was probably in kindergarten or first grade, and it was a little tiny book. I think they still even publish them, but it was called Harold and His Purple Crayon. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah,
book.
I have read that book.
Okay, what's cool about Harold and His Purple Crayon is this little kid obviously has a purple crayon, and just like you, Thompson, he has white walls behind him. And he takes the purple crayon, which his parents would not like, and draws on the walls. But whatever he draws comes to life. And he goes off into that world. He might draw a rocket ship, and suddenly he's in outer space. And I think that kind of made it okay for me to have an imagination. And I thought, because I had those same kind of, I just didn't have the purple crayon, but I had the imagination to go with it. And there was something fundamentally wonderful about reading a book that just said, whatever you can imagine can come true. And that's still what I'm doing with Disney and the Kingdom Keepers and other books like that, is if you can dream it, we can make it real.
Yeah, speaking on Kingdom Keepers, one of Walt Disney's most famous quotes is, if you can dream it, you can do it.
That's it.
And that's one of my favorite quotes of his.
Me too, Thompson. I live by it.
Yeah, I'm currently reading your Kingdom Keepers series. I read it in 4th grade, and I got to the 4th book, and then for whatever reason I stopped. But
I can tell you the reason. It isn't a very good book. I am rewriting that book in its entirety as we speak. I'm like 2 weeks from finishing it. But the series has been giantly popular. It's sold millions of copies. And about 2 years ago, we all realized that the parks, because what happened is Disney let me into their parks after hours, after closing.
Yeah.
And I got to see it a whole different way. It was empty and scary and quiet and dark. And I went behind the scenes of all the rides. I went on the rides all alone 10, 12 times and took notes. It's been insane. I've been in the parks 31 times after closing now.
Wow.
But what we realized after 15 years was that the parks I wrote about, they weren't really there anymore. That Disney had changed them so much that they came back to me and asked if I would rewrite all the books. So I am now just finishing book 4. Book 1 through 3 are going to be packaged next year, and then 4 through 7 will be packaged in the fall, I think, of 22. But it's been a huge undertaking because, of course, I have to revisit all the parks, learn all the new stuff that's in there, and then change the books to adjust for that. So I sure thank you for reading, and I hope you keep reading right on through.
Yeah, and since I've been rereading them, I bought the updated editions of 2 and 3.
Good.
One question.
So 3 is a brand new book.
Yeah. 3 is like, the original 3 is like this thick, and this one's like this thin, and I'm just like, it's a nice short book, which I like. Good.
And it's I was able to talk to the Imagineers about what rides are going in there right now as they're rebuilding it. And so it's very updated, and you go in rides. In the old book, you couldn't find the rides anymore because they're all gone. So the fun thing has been to create sort of a highly energized book, a little shorter, but highly energized and actually placed in a park that's there now.
So, if my listeners are wanting to read the series, do you think that if they want to read it before the updated edition of 4 comes out, should they read the new updated version, or should they read the original version?
Disney would want them to read the new updated version. I actually just had a discussion with my editor about this yesterday. They would much rather young readers read the new editions, because that way, if the kids then go into the parks, they'll see what's in the books.
Yeah.
If you read the original editions, which I adore, and as I said, have sold in the millions, so a lot of people like them. The trouble is, if you go in the parks now, a lot of what's in the book you won't be able to locate.
Yeah, especially because a lot of it takes place in Epcot. The fact that it's just Epcot is, even right now, it's going through an extensive remodel.
Big remodel. Yeah.
So, yeah, and it's just, I've loved that series. It's kind of gotten me back into reading, because I was at a point where I was like, oh my gosh, I was like so swamped with schoolwork that I was like, I don't have time for reading anymore.
Exactly what happens. And how old are you now?
I'm 12 and I'm going
It's just
into
perfect.
second
And then
grade.
what happens is we get so busy with schoolwork. And honestly, sometimes the books that school has us read aren't very interesting.
No,
So
no.
we start to go, I don't like reading. But the truth of the matter is, Thompson, the more you read, the smarter you get. Now,
Yeah.
that may be not true if you read my books, but most books. Mainly because you're seeing words on a page, you're learning vocabulary, you're recalling spelling. You get very smart the more you read. So my hope is that I and other writers can write exciting books that you really want to read. I have people read The Kingdom Keepers 5, 6, 7 times. And I really believe that the more you read, the smarter you get.
Yeah. Yeah, book 3 has been super good so far. The updated version, I'm really enjoying
Thank you.
it.
Thank you. I had so much fun doing it.
Yeah, right now I feel I'm on, I think, page 130, so I'm about
Okay.
halfway through.
Yeah, right.
So it's just
Well,
been,
book 4 will be about the same length. I'm making it smaller too.
yeah, so I think I'll wait, or I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I can wait that long, but I'm just really, really enjoying that. So my next question for you is, what was the first book your first published book that you ever wrote?
The first book I had published was called Never Look Back. And it was about a foreign agent about which I knew nothing, on a train in Canada where I'd never been. And it was all about chemical weapons, which I knew nothing about. But I took 83 books out of the library over a period of 2 years, read them all, learned all about all of those things, and then wrote what I thought was a really fun thriller about a guy being chased by law enforcement across Canada. It sold about 6 copies, but it got me started, and I got off and running. And then about 3 books later, my 4th book, just by luck, became a big national bestseller, what they call a bestseller, meaning it's selling as well as the top 10 books in the country. And that launched my career, and now I've published 62 books. So it's been a long road.
Yeah, here on my bookshelf over here.
Yeah, I see that bookshelf. That's a pretty healthy bookshelf.
Yeah, I have an entire just stack
Oh, look at you.
right here.
Oh, you are amazing.
I've got.
So what happened? Let me tell you how this happened, Thompson. So I'll give you the short version of this so I don't put you to sleep. But I had never been to Disney World until I was in my 40s. And I had 2 young kids. My wife and I had 2 young kids. And we wanted to go to Disney World. And we went with a friend of mine named Dave Barry. And I wrote my publisher because they were connected to Disney at the time. And I said, is there anything special you could do for me and Dave Barry when we're down there? Well, they rolled out the red carpet. They nailed it. And we had the 3 best days you could ever have in Disney World. So one of the things my parents taught me is always write a thank you note. If somebody does something nice for you, or you go to a dinner or whatever, write a thank you note. So I wrote an email to my publisher thanking him for arranging for us to have such a great time. And he wrote me back and said, you need to call this woman, Wendy Lefcon, over at Disney Books, because she actually knew everyone and made everything happen. So I called Wendy Lefcon and thanked her. And I described how impressed I was with the attractions at Disney, because they each told a story. They weren't just like Six Flags where you go around and get sick on something. They actually had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And she said to me, you would be an Imagineer's dream. And I said, what's an Imagineer?
That's
And
what
she
I wanted to
explained that
grow up.
they are the people who design and build all the attractions. So one thing led to another. And eventually I wrote these books called The Kingdom Keepers, but it was all because I wrote basically a thank you note.
Wow.
So write your thank you note.
Yeah. I love writing thank you notes.
Me too.
Yeah, so Imagineering is my dream.
Great job to have.
Yeah, so I've been trying to do everything possible. Disney put out something with Khan Academy called Imagineering in a Box.
Right.
and I've been working through that, and it's just been tons of fun.
Yeah, and STEAM, if you can take STEAM courses, take those, because you can be an architect, an engineer, a sound designer, a light designer, and so the STEAM program has all the sort of math and science end of being an Imagineer covered.
Yeah, I've been one of my grandpas he's actually an engineer.
Huh?
So I'm gonna try to get him to teach me some stuff about engineering.
So the engineer that designed and built Expedition Everest, he was my guide when I went into Animal Kingdom at 4:30 one morning to work on the second book. Yeah. And he and I walked the entire track of Expedition Everest. It took about 2 hours. And then he said, well, now I'm going to bring some cast members in and we'll turn on the ride. It was maybe 5:30 or 6 at this point. And he said, and you can ride my roller coaster. And I said, well, I'd love to do that, but I really don't like roller coasters. They make me sick. And he said, Mr. Pearson, I got up at 4:30 in the morning to guide you around the park. You are going to ride my roller coaster. And I said, yes, sir. And so they turned on the roller coaster and I rode it alone at about 400 miles an hour through that place, screaming the whole way, a grown man going, get me off of this thing, because I was terrified. And then I put all that into the book.
That's how I felt when I was in Disneyland a few years ago. I rode the Incredicoaster, and
I don't even know that. What's the Incredicoaster?
So, in Disney California Adventure,
that thing, that big white one?
Yeah, it used to be called California Screamin', but
that's how I know it. Yeah.
And I was just like, I was terrified because there was a loop-de-loop, and I was just like getting on this thing.
Get me off of that thing.
No, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna do it, and I had a great time once we got to the loop-de-loop, and I survived.
I have never been on a loop-de-loop, and I never want to be on a loop-de-loop.
It wasn't actually that bad.
I just can't imagine being upside down.
Once I realized that I was even upside down, I wasn't upside down anymore. So
I couldn't do it. I'm telling you.
I couldn't wait until it was over.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I was. It was interesting because I've been on basically all the attractions in Disney World multiple times, but I had never been on Rock and Roller Coaster. And I just didn't want to go on Rock and Roller Coaster. So I was being toured around by a VIP guide, the vests that they wear. And she was really sweet. And we were driving around backstage at Disney Hollywood Studios. And we pulled up along Rock and Roller Coaster. And she said, so this is my favorite ride. What do you think of it? And I said, well, honestly, I've never been on it. And she just stopped the car and she said, Ridley, you cannot write about Disney and not have ridden on Rock and Roller Coaster. And I said, but I hate roller coasters. And she said, but you're going on this. So she basically took my hand, led me onto the roller coaster. And that thing it pulls 5 Gs in about 12 seconds. So your face is in one time zone and your teeth are in another. And I just like you, I wanted off. That's all I wanted. It was just like, get me off this ride, please. Get me off this ride. You've got to get me off this ride. In my head, going over and over and over. I was terrified.
Yeah, that sounds scary. Here, is there a loop in Rockin' Roller Coaster?
I have no idea because my eyes were shut the whole time.
No, let's go. Okay.
The thing about Rock and Roller Coaster is its speed. It goes so fast.
I'm almost positive. I feel like I watched somewhere that it does have a loop.
No, really? Did I go on a loop?
Yeah.
Well, I've never been the same, Thompson. My head doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, it was just like, I'm just like, okay, this is the end. It was the same time I went on Big Thunder, and I've been on Expedition Everest one time, and I wasn't really scared for that one because I was like 8, and honestly, an 8-year-old wasn't scared to do anything.
That's true. It's a really fun ride, I have to
Yeah.
admit, but my kids like it more than I do.
Okay, so my next question for you is, wow. Okay. So you've kind of already answered this, but what inspired you to write The Kingdom Keepers? Like, how did you what's your process of, like, how did you come up with characters like Finn and Charlene and all the other DHIs?
Yeah, so there's a really long answer to this, but you can probably find it elsewhere. And that involves why I got into the holograms and all of that. That was a decision that I had to make because of the lawyers at Disney. Even though Disney asked me to write the book, it wasn't even my idea. They asked me if I could write a thrilling, exciting book like I write for adults, but for younger readers set in their parks. So when I went to do it, one of the things that I really believe in and I like to put into my books, because it's been a big part of my own life, is the concept of teamwork. That, yes, we can do things alone and we can do them well, but you can do even more and greater things when you work well with the team. And so in forming the initial idea for the Kingdom Keepers, I thought, well, I've got to have a team. I don't want it to be about one guy or two people. Well, this was a really stupid decision, Thompson. This is something you never want to do as a writer. But I did it. And so I created 5 characters, and 2 of them, Finn and Philby, are they're sort of versions of me. I'm a real techie guy. And in many instances, I'm an Eagle Scout. So in many instances of my life, I've had to be a leader, even though I'm a reluctant leader, but you just have to do what you have to do. Creating those characters was pretty easy and really fun. And to this day, Finn and Amanda are probably my 2 favorite characters. But I created the character Charlene after our oldest daughter, Paige, who's cute and blonde and very athletic. So there's a lot of Paige in Charlene. And then I had a drummer in one of my bands who considered himself like a really handsome guy with the girls. He thought he was a really cool stud. And I don't know if he was or not, but he thought he was. And like, he pressed his blue jeans, so he just looked so good. And I made Maybeck a lot like that drummer. And when I went to boarding school, I went to a private boarding school for high school. And one of the years I had an African-American roommate named Vern Dundee. So I shaped Maybeck a little bit out after Vern and a little bit after this drummer. And then Willa is again a little bit like me, is because I was a musician for so many years and a singer actor before that, and because with writing books I have to go out into public and speak at big functions of 5,000 people stuff, hopefully I can get out and get energized and do my thing. But really, the person I am is kind of a quiet guy in a little room, and I'm a little bit nerdy and a little bit lonely and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of Willa. Willa's a little bit withdrawn in the books, but she's very smart and she's always observing. I love to observe. That's why I've been in the parks 31 times to write Kingdom Keepers, is if you see something and listen to it and feel it, then you can really write about it. If you're just making it all up, it isn't, to me, as easy. So I love to do research, and especially to go somewhere and see it and feel it and smell it and taste it and be there in order to describe it better.
Yeah, that's a lot. I've always heard authors say that characters are sometimes built around themselves. So that's just like super, and other people that they know. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, it really is, because, that's who you know the best. So I take people I know, and I take 2 or 3 people and make them into one, because none of us is very interesting. But when you take 3 of us, we can be pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I see a lot of myself in Finn sometimes, just because I like leading. It's It's a lot of fun. And also, my favorite character in the entire series is Wayne.
Oh, Wayne. Do you know the story behind Wayne Thompson?
No.
I'm going to tell you, I know we got to leave soon, but I'm going to tell you one last story here. So the first of these 31 trips into the parks, after dark, at night, in the dark, no music, nothing's turned on. It's spookier than spooky can be. They took me to Splash Mountain. And there was a guy there, and he had white hair, and he had worked on Thunder Mountain for, I believe at that point, 35 years.
That's crazy.
I mean, Splash Mountain, not Thunder Mountain, Splash Mountain. And he walked me around the ride. Well, when you walk the emergency exits of Splash Mountain and the ride's turned off, the ride is dry. There's no water in it. You know, there's maybe 3 spots where there's some water because it's level, but otherwise it's all drained out of there. So we walked this thing looking at these dry pipes, tubes, and of course I spent an hour and a half, 2 hours with this guy, and you get to know him. And I started to realize I'd already begun writing the book at this point, and I turned to him and I said, you know, sir, you are so much like this character I've put in a book, and he's kind of a mentor to the Kingdom Keepers, and he knows everything. This guy I was talking to had met Walt Disney years ago.
Wow,
I mean, he was all of that. And then it dawned on me, and I said, you know, would you mind if I used your name in the book? And he said, no, I'd be honored. And I looked down at his name tag, and it said
Wayne.
Wayne.
That's so cool.
And so I named him Wayne in the book.
Yeah, that's nice. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, currently in...
Write what you know what I mean?
Yeah. Currently in book 3, they're trying to find Wayne. And I'm just like, it's been so long since I read the books, I forget what happens. So I'm just
Hold your breath.
Yeah.
I love Wayne. I mean, I really admire and respect the man in real life. And he retired about 3 years ago. He's just the greatest guy. But the character in the book I really love. He helps the kids, but he doesn't push them. He lets their imaginations work, but he doesn't tell them how to use them. He's just kind of a guy to metaphorically hold their hands and lead them through this quest. And he knows a lot more than most people know. That's what I will say about the books. When you're reading the books, trust Wayne.
Yeah, Wayne has always been, he's like, his mysterious and knowledge, he's kind of mysterious, and his knowledge of the parks is just super cool. And it's just, I'm really, really enjoying the series. So I do have one more question for you.
Sure.
We are running out of time, and this one isn't serious, really that serious. Have you ever had a Dole Whip?
A Dole Whip? Yes.
Okay.
They're unbelievable. If you eat one, you have to eat about 5.
Yeah, they're so good.
I happen to like pineapple, so they are just so good. There was a party one time that I was invited to, which was after hours inside one of the parks, and that's what they served. I had about 3 of them. They're so good.
Yeah, Dole Whip is so good. I think that I might have it. Oh, who cares? I have a Dole Whip t-shirt.
No way.
I try to wear as much as possible because
that's so great.
It's the greatest ice cream ever.
It is the best ice cream.
So pineapple juice, I know pineapple juice. Do you like the Dole Whip? Have you ever had a Dole Whip float?
No, not a float, but they have pineapple in them.
Yeah, so I
haven't had a float. I'm not a big float guy.
Yeah.
I like ice cream. Don't dilute it and make it melt and everything. Just give me good ice cream.
Yeah, I tried the Dole Whip float when I was in Disneyland, and I'm just like, I don't get it. I just want a Dole Whip.
Exactly. I'm with you, Thompson. Dole Whips.
Dole Whip. Hello, your young correspondent here, trying to do an outro before the host finds out that I'm doing it without him. He's watching Boy Meets World and eating a Dole Whip, and I didn't feel like I needed to interrupt that, so I'm going to do it without him, but there's a chance that he could be upset, so we're just going to keep this in between us. Don't tell the host. Alright, thank you all for listening once again, and I will see you in the next episode of The Apartment Above the Firehouse.